Stage, only the host can see you. You can do chat.
Yes. What's good? What's good, my people? This is Mike Lane. It's kind of it's going to be the aftermath of Virgil Con. Really excited to kind of like deal with that situation. Man, what do you think, Webbs?
Oh my God, this is so cool. Oh, and it auto-generates captions?
Facts.
What? That's so cool. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm glad that this auto-generates captions. That's been something that's bothering me. You know what? I am floored by how even though, so little like behind the scenes, right? So we have, our network of people that we reach out to. We have some topic ideas that we are interested in having folks talk about. We don't, like, the people who talk at Virgil Con generally don't talk to one another. Like, we have some basic questions for them. They kind of know what they want to talk about. And yet it's so cool to see these constant themes that come back over and over again, iterating on ideas, empathy with your customer, asking your students, what do they want? What are they looking for? What would help them? The accessibility thing, we came back to that again and again after we talked to Valerie, because just even thinking in terms of, and we discussed this a little bit with Kurt, how poor design can actually lead to a situational disability. So making sure that as a teacher, you're mindful of, how am I displaying my content? Am I being considerate of the method in which teachers or my students are not absorbing, what am I looking for? My students are consuming my content. So just seeing those things over and over again, and it's just really cool to see those constant themes. What are your thoughts?
It's always fun just to chat. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes you live in your own head, or like we converse pretty regularly, but having people outside of your network and outside of that, your sphere of influence, also kind of toss ideas into the arena that you can take and you can start iterating upon, I think is also dope. And seeing things from different people's perspectives. Like, again, I like that Brown is a music teacher, for example. I'm not a music teacher. I've never taught music in my life. Some of the problems or the pain points she's going to experience, I'm not going to experience. So hearing those things from her perspective, I think is really dope. And then just learning, like being someone who's open-minded enough to learn. And I think the shark mentality, I know that the Kobe Bryant thing is this Mamba mentality thing. I'm not, I think Kobe Bryant was a great basketball player or whatever, but I take this shark mentality a lot more to heart. The fact that sharks, if they stop swimming, they die. Like that's kind of, if you cease to learn, you're no longer somebody who's going to be able to improve. And I think that's something that I try to take to heart and try to be open-minded with about when I do converse with people. Seeing their perspective to a point and like, okay, cool. These are the nuggets that I can take from you and in order to add to my toolbox in order to be a better person. So that was pretty much my, I think the last 3 days have been really, really cool. And then also, go ahead, Webs.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do enjoy being able to just chat with people. I know last year for Virgil Con, that was the first year that we did it. And we did it more of a traditional, like, conference style where there were different sessions going on. I really enjoyed just like having a conversation, not having to worry about like, having somebody prepare a slide deck. Elizabeth and Jeff did, which is totally cool. But like, yeah, just being able to have a conversation with somebody and get their thoughts and not have it be like such a formal way of sharing information, because we talked about this a little bit yesterday. One of my favorite parts of a conference is the little conversations you have. So the conversations you have at lunch or when you're on a break and you're just, sitting in a courtyard or hanging out, on a bench, wherever, whatever, having those conversations. That's where you, and one of my favorite podcasts actually, Cortex, Mike talked about how this year's WWDC was way different because he didn't get to have those conversations with his friends over lunch and dinner and drinks and whatever to kind of process some of the information from the day. And so, yeah, it is really nice to not have any particular like specific objectives that we're trying to hit. It's just wherever the conversation takes us is what we end up talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other interesting thing was having other things. So having the space in between a lot of those conversations when you had other meetings or other ideas kind of created another neural connection, right? So you were like, oh, I just got off this other meeting in which I was thinking about this. And now this other person throws this productive entropy into my environment again. You're like, oh, that's really, really dope. So like Tuesday, we started off with, was it Tuesday or Wednesday? We started with Anna.
Wednesday.
Started with Anna Wednesday. No, Thursday. Thursday, we started off with Anna. And then I had a PBS webinar right after that in which we talked about media literacy and anti-racist teaching tools with little kids. And so I went from this like woo-saw, really centering yourself and grounding yourself conversation to this like really heavy, we need to kind of, assess our media, assess how we're teaching our little kids how to talk about race and racism and differences and intersectionality, to then jumping back into a conversation with Valerie where you're like, okay, now accessibility, and you're like, oh, these things all have like this Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs type scenario in which I'm forced to reconcile with which pieces of this go together, which pieces of this don't. And just because they don't go together doesn't mean that they're wrong. Right. So I think it's really cool to have those mental exercises with oneself in order to kind of ascertain different perspectives about how the world works.
I think too, the connections, in addition to the ways that those conversations are different, the way that they're similar, when people there was no like deliberate connection there. It just so happened like the pieces fall into place. I think that also helps form your idea of the world, or at least it helps me form my idea of the world. Yeah. If I feel like if my thought is, you know what, I think a good way to approach solving a problem is to do a little bit at a time and go back and revisit and improve it a little bit each time. And then hearing that thread come through in so many different ways, it reinforces this idea that, okay, maybe I'm on the right track. And I feel like that is, so if we think about like traditional school, right? You do a problem, you go to your teacher, is this right? Oh, no, that's not right. Here's what you did wrong. Then I do another problem that's just like that. And I go to the teacher, is this right? Well, these steps are right, but you made a mistake here. And then I do it again and again and again. But I'm always looking to the teacher to tell me that I'm right. What if I developed an internal mechanism, or I can go to various people in my world and help me? I go to another student at my table, or I can ask a sibling, like, can you help me validate? Can you walk me through this? And that was another really powerful theme, I think, of all of our work lately seems to be, you can't go it alone. You need to find your crew. Like, you need to find the people that you can call on when you need feedback from things. That's how you become better as a person. That's how you become better as a professional, is you're constantly asking for that feedback. And I just sent out yesterday that the peer list that we were working on, I sent it out to a bunch of people, got a bunch of feedback. There were some themes to the feedback that I got. So making changes, iterating, improving it. I did a webinar last week. And they said, if you're not embarrassed by your first draft, your first release of something, then you've released too late. And so that's something that's kind of like circulating in my head too. Like, you can't wait until it's perfect. You can't even wait until you're comfortable with it. You need to just get it out there. I think Kurt said that this morning. You need to just get it out there and then get feedback from people. Like, am I going in the right direction? Don't waste a bunch of time.
Yeah. But I think that is a concept that's unfortunately foreign to education, in terms of like, we don't look at lesson plans as prototypes. We look at lesson plans as finished products that are perfect.
Yep.
And I think that has to go, it goes back to the philosophy behind a lesson plan and how flawed that philosophy is, right? It's not a problem-solving tool. It is, I know the answer. Here, I'm leading you to the correct answer. This is the correct answer. This is mastery. This is what it looks like. Not, I have no idea. Let's go on a search for a quest for what this looks like. This is the destination. This is where everyone has to be in order to be proficient. And I think that is a problem in distance learning. Like, that's going to be a very large hurdle, because you're not going to be able to hurdle everyone to that scenario. Webb's still there. I'm here by myself. I'm lonely. But we'll see when Webb's comes back on. But that becomes a scenario in which it becomes problematic. That, you know, having the answer is a problem. Are you good now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. And there are so many things that are inherent to education that are antithetical to the distance learning, like teacher as the font of knowledge, teacher as the controller of all things, basically teacher as the center of the universe, who is an infallible figure. Like, unfortunately, there is so much pride, and I don't mean that in a positive way. Teachers have so much pride, and adult learners are so fragile in terms of their egos, kind of like Kurt talked about this morning. You know, you put this thing out, and if someone doesn't like it or doesn't do well with it, somehow that is, you know, an indication that you have failed me and I don't like you. And it's all this negative feeling around it. We need to separate away from that. And one of the things I thought of that I don't think I mentioned this morning was, again, going back to my ThoughtWorks training course, we did a thing where we had to get like customer feedback on our app prototype. And one of the things they tell you is you just have to listen. You can't defend your design. If a consumer says, I don't understand this, you can't say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. Let me explain it to you. It needs to be self-explanatory and natural to the consumer. And if it's not, you need to improve your design. And that's just how it is. Like, you don't get to defend your design. You don't get to say that you don't understand. And I think we do see a lot where if a student isn't learning, the teacher says there's something wrong with the student, rather than reflecting on how can I improve this experience and adapt it better for the student.
Oh, facts. I mean, again, I've told you this many times. Like, that first 2 years of me starting teaching, I apologize to those kids, man. Like, literally.
Same.
The me now, 17 years in, it's all kind of stuff that I look back and I reflect in my mind like, dude, that was really stupid that you did that. That was also really stupid. That wasn't good design. That was horrible. I'm surprised that any of those kids can read. I'm surprised any of those kids have jobs, because you really screwed those kids up. And you have to have a unapologetic reflection mechanism in your practice. Where when I was going to school physically, right after we finished doing my duty, I would sit down in my chair and just say, these are the things I did wrong today. This, that, this, that, this, and that. And not that I didn't do good, the things that were good. You know, those are easy to find, though. And it's very easy to congratulate yourself for being an awesome teacher. It's a lot harder for you to go through with a fine-tooth comb and say, your transition was very poor there. That kid over there, remember, that kid just got here from El Salvador. They speak no English. You kind of, you didn't give them enough think time. You didn't pair them with a Spanish-speaking peer. You didn't do this. That kid just, there's a lot of stuff you can, again, I try to be unapologetically hard on myself. And that might not be something everyone's comfortable with, but I think education is such an important thing that if you're not unduly harsh on yourself, you can have people leave your classroom that unprepared to be productive citizens.
Well, we were talking about, it's a balance between, you need to have some empathy for yourself as well, but you can't let your empathy become an excuse for not doing better, and not improving and being, closing your eyes to some of your flaws and some of your biases, whether that's a bias toward, Black and brown students, if that's a bias you have with regard to accessibility and what you're making available, how you're making information available to your students, you need to constantly, and that's again where, this is why I preach feedback. Like, it's so hard to look at yourself from every perspective. It's way easier to just ask someone else, what did you think of that? And to build up those relationships so that someone is comfortable giving you direct feedback and collecting it from lots of different sources, so that if your administrator is saying, here's what I see, and you have like 6 other people who are saying, that's not what I see. Yeah, I get that they're your administrator, but maybe they have a bias. They're human. They're not perfect. But if you don't.
That's you talking from, though, systems, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think the education system isn't built for feedback. The education system is built for your direct supervisor gives you feedback maybe twice a year, maybe, right? And for the rest of the school year, it's like, oh, you're awesome. Go be awesome. Like, go figure that stuff out. And everyone's good. Like, you have no flaws. You're good. Like that, again, and I think that reinforces what you were saying before, that it's not me, it's you. Like, if the kid doesn't get it, I'm awesome, right? I don't have any flaws. You're 5. That's not an excuse. You should know how to read. That's not my bad.
There was I don't know if it was a Facebook video or a TikTok going around of, it was like administrator doing an observation, and it was the person comes in with their clipboard and they sit down next to the student. Oh, no, you pay attention. You look up there. So are you learning? What are you learning? Oh, that's what you're learning? Okay. Then the little walkie-talkie goes off. Yeah, I can come down to the cafeteria. Yep. Okay. All right. You be good. I gotta go. Bye. And then you don't see them again for 6 months. And to a certain extent, going back to the system thing, it's not even necessarily the fault of the administrator. The system is broken, because trying to get, it's not, I remember Verena had mentioned, when you did the math.
Shout out to me. Go ahead.
Yeah. She's been tolerating not having us to talk to. I'm sure she has other people to talk to, but our conversation, our group chat has gone silent because we've been doing Virgil Con. But she had done the math on how many, if you break down prep time versus instructional hours, and you get 9 minutes to prepare for each instructional hour throughout the week. No one spends 9 minutes preparing for an hour of anything. If you were to say in the professional world, you get 9 minutes and you have to give a 1 hour presentation, you would get laughed at. People spend weeks preparing a 1 hour presentation. So the idea that teachers can do that is outrageous. And then on top of that, you have administrators are supposed to do observations on all of their staff. With what time? Again, things are constantly being piled on.
Facts.
So where does that time come from? Because it has to come from somewhere.
Facts.
And one more reason I think distance education has a tremendous is a tremendous watershed moment. It's an opportunity to rethink that whole thing and to break down some of those failures of that system. So how can we stop thinking about things as having to occur synchronously, and adapt for people who are night owls? Adapt for high school students. That studies have shown high school students require more sleep. They wake up later. Their whole hours are shifted. They're growing. They have hormones.
High school student.
What?
I'm an eternal high school student.
Exactly. So we have this opportunity to shift that all so that they can still take advantage of school opportunities, but so that they aren't trying to function at a time that's not normal to them. And instead of doing that, it seems like we're just, nope, you need to have 30 minutes of synchronous instruction. And why? We're building a box for ourselves that we don't need.
Facts. All facts. But it's comfortable to already have it established. You know what I'm saying? It's uncomfortable to think about it different ways. And again, I am not begrudging anyone who's like, hey, you know what? I'm more comfortable sitting face to face with people. That's totally cool. But you cannot discount people like myself that I love the way that things are going right now. So for forever, it has been forcing people into this model that, first of all, we didn't sign up for. Second of all, benefits certain people and not others. All right. So again, how can you say that test scores are legitimate, outcomes are legitimate, when there are people that we know don't fit into those boxes efficiently, and the outcome has to be impacted by the fact that my brain isn't on until 11:30. So if I had my math class at 6 in the morning, right, I'm sitting there still asleep, groggy. You got an F in math. Well, did I get an F in math, or did I get an F in math because the time was intractable? It couldn't be changed. But if you would have given me that course at 1 in the afternoon, I would have smacked it. Or give me the option to take my assessment at 1 in the afternoon or anytime that I wanted to, I would have smacked it, and I would have shown you exactly what I needed to do. And so I think that there is if we go back to the normal that benefited a certain subset of people, I think that would be you would have to wonder, given what we are seeing now. And again, I will harp again on the micro schools, that parents who are coming together saying that, hey, I'm going to recruit a teacher or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 to make sure our community of learners is taken care of. Now, I've read multiple articles. It's going to create inequality in the system, et cetera, et cetera. It can, but it doesn't have to. Because again, communities of color, communities of poverty and whatnot, we could have teachers that go into those communities who are high functioning and know what they're talking about and reshape how education is working. Because again, a lot of this is going on the assumption that traditional education is working for these people anyway. It is not. Now, go ahead.
Oh, I think I get where the concern is coming from, though, because if this is parent funded and, the wealthy communities can go out and buy whatever teacher they want, and the poorer communities, like, where are they going to afford these world-class teachers? How are they going to afford these world-class teachers?
Absolutely. But again, if you look at market economies, right, what pressure would that put on public schools to remake how things work? If the upper crust parent is saying, this is what I want, 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 and you go back to the old system, which again did not benefit the communities of color, the communities of poverty, et cetera, and you say, nope, this is the model we're selling, I think you would have a rise of charter schools in the end of public education in terms of this coercive mechanism in a lot of ways, because you would have teachers that in DC and PG County, et cetera, there are communities of color that are saying, you know what? I think choice is important. I want my school to look so-and-so way, and a rise of activism. Look at what happened after the George Floyd's Breonna Taylor. You had activists rise up and say, enough of this. You would have, I think, in those communities of color, other people that rose up and say, you know what? It sucks that we don't have Wi-Fi in our community. It sucks that our kids don't have devices. And we're not going to go and continue to converse with people who are pretending they don't hear us. You know what I'm saying? I think there is becoming a frustration when you're telling me that education is the key to escape poverty, for equality, etc., and you're offering me garbage time school, man.
Garbage time school.
I mean, I'm going to keep it 100. It's a lot of this stuff. These are institutions that are traditionally giving me a second-rate education, and I can't escape that place because I am zoned for this school. So now, how fair is that? How fair is that my geography determines what type of education I'm going to be offered?
Yeah, I think I think there are a lot of layers to that problem. I do agree that the education that's being offered is poor. I think public education should be an option, and it should be well funded, and it should be meritocratical and equitable, and it is not. That is a fact. I think I definitely have some tension around like defunding it completely and what kind of gap that would create.
I'm not saying defund it, but what do public schools get? How do you fund a public school? What is that based on?
Depends on where you're from. Property taxes, a little bit of federal money, income taxes, depending on.
But you get all those boiled down to per pupil, right? I get a certain amount of money per every kid that's sitting in the seat. If those kids start to go other places, I don't get that money, right? So essentially you have de facto defunded it. You have said, I'm going to make other choices, whether it's a charter school or whatever. And I think you're currently in a scenario in which I am not saying that it is totally cool that the micro learning is going to happen. I'm not saying that those things that's just that there is no downside to that scenario. What I'm saying is that the innovative person is looking at this and like, okay, why are these people doing this? Like, what is the attraction of you taking teachers who you perceive as high-level instructors and saying, I want caviar for my kids, all right? Because I think, again, every parent wants caviar for I don't think that's just rich people, right? Like, I mean, everybody wants the best teacher available. So if they are using capitalism to essentially create a dual school system in which a select few students who are going to benefit from these awesome teachers, the Kurt Kleinens of the world, these like outside of box thinkers, why can we not, as public schools, say we can do the same thing? Like, there's no reason that you couldn't do the same thing with public money and say the idea of concrete brick and mortar schools is a little outdated. We can do that better than just saying your geography determines where you go to school, because that's silly.
Because that's going back to the whole monolithic thing. And I don't think there is a lot of innovation happening at the upper levels of most school districts. It's, hey, this is the way we've always done it. We want to keep things very, Wonder Bread, boring, same as it's always been. Like, we don't want innovation. We don't want to have any kind of. We want to have the illusion of innovation. But when it comes to actually putting your money behind that innovation, it doesn't happen. It happens maybe at the school level if you have a school level administrator who does something with their budget to actually fund things, has a long-term plan. But when you're talking, like, you get into the upper echelons of stuff, like superintendent level things and district level things, that's where it all falls apart. And
you can't rely on them. And I think, again, it becomes a situation where guerrilla fighters are agile. Large armies may be better funded, but in terms of switching on a dime and not having monolithic. You got a lot of people that got to okay some stuff in a large corporation. You got, if it's me, you, and a couple other crazy people, we can switch stuff whenever. You know what I'm saying? And there's no problem. So I think you have to look at a school level and say, do you have someone who's completely insane at a school level that's like, let's go see what happens with this? But you have to have someone who has the
then you have the Windows problem.
What do you mean?
The Windows problem. So nobody ever got fired for using Windows. Also, we have a question in the chat, but nobody ever got fired for using Windows, so we keep using Windows. Like, nobody has switched over to Linux. Because if you stay with what people know and it fails, it wasn't you, because we've always used that. But if you try something new and you fail, then that's a problem. There is a comment in the chat. Your mom says, exactly, a lot of instructions for putting things together come with pictures because people use pictures better than written instructions. Facts. We did what was that session we did like years ago about, it was using comics and science or something, and what is it, 80, you retain something better.
80% of what you see, you retain.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
visual learning is the best learning. Not to reading
would be the best learning.
So not to reading at all, but define reading. What does that mean?
What is literacy?
Yeah, what literacy, literatus means to know something, not to read it. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to what literacy actually means, it's to mean to be knowledgeable about something. That's whether you read it, you listened to it, you watched it, whatever. Can you duplicate and do what I asked you to do? Great. There are people who have photographic memories, right? So I can watch something one time and now I know how to do it. Great. Awesome. Would I say, okay, Bob, I need my car fixed. He has a photographic memory. He saw somebody fix the solenoid in the car or whatever. No. I want you to read a book about doing that first, Bob. I don't want you touching my car. Read the book first. Right?
When I had to replace my sink, I did not go buy a book I looked on YouTube. I want to see someone do it. I want to see the pieces you're talking about, not just read the names of them.
I can pause it, rewind it. Oh my God, kind of sweet. When I learned how to put a garbage disposal together, take it apart and install a new one, all from some dude on YouTube. I watched it about 3 or 4 times. I had the whole thing. Now I put 3 or 4 garbage disposals in my house. Like, literally, we are using old standards as the world moves forward, and you're kind of like you are dumbfounded as to why we are doing this. When in your regular life, you don't do that, right? You don't
cursive and analog clocks.
Facts.
All right, we got another comment. Tiffany says, as an administrator, it's getting harder to find good teachers. How do we attract people back into this career? It has such a bad reputation. People aren't getting into education. Who would be great teachers with new, fresh ideas?
Oh, absolute facts. Absolute
That
facts.
is a great, I
But
mean.
I got all kind of ideas about that too, though, fam. I got all kind of ideas about that because, again, so there's a great book. If you have not read The Medici Effect, Franz Johansson, it's an amazing book. All right. It's a book that, as a teacher, it forced me to reconcile with some things and then reinforce some things. But the premise of the book is essentially diversity of experience and diversity of people. And that's just not racial diversity. That's religious diversity. That's, gender. That's where you solve problems. Look at education, right? What is the demographic of the average teacher, Webbs?
80% white women.
So you got
almost 90. I think it's 86% white women.
So you got a situation in which your workforce is a monolith. This is a problem. All right, this is a problem because you're not getting innovation. You're not getting ideas from outside. You got a bunch of white ladies in the room. This is generally a problem. All right. So not that we have to go and eliminate the white ladies from the room. We just have to have other people in the room to say, no, you don't want to do that. Let's think of it this way or that way, whatever. So part of the issue is eliminating, in my opinion, the college education. Shouldn't be college education anymore. There's no need for that. Like, education could be a minor, but you spending 2.5 years of your life learning how to teach. Now, I was an undergrad, I was a sociology major. All right. And that prepared me to be a better teacher than my master's degree in education, to tell you the truth.
I'm going to add to that a huge shout out to Eastern Michigan University, which is my alma mater. And I didn't realize that I chose Eastern because it had a really good reputation for their College of Education. But I didn't realize until I left and actually got into the profession and started talking to other people about their undergrad and teaching experience that most colleges do have you just get an education degree. So at Eastern, you had to pick a major and a minor or 3 minors and also go through the College of Education because, so like my major was language arts education, my minor was bilingual education. You had to learn how to teach music and PE. I couldn't apply any of my waivers. So I had to take chemistry. I had to take geology, I think. And I had a couple math waivers as well that I couldn't use because they wanted you to go through and make sure everyone had that solid background of like general knowledge. Shout out to Diana Dreyer, who has a degree in general knowledge. Not really, but that's a long story. Anyway, yeah, so I totally agree with you. I think this idea that you just major in education and that's it is a tremendous failing of a lot of institutions. Like you need to have and this has been a common theme in everyone I've noticed we've talked to as well is they either have done multiple careers and one of those happened to be education, or they're people who touch many subjects and are interested in many subjects and topics and blend all of those together. And I think that's what makes them very strong teachers is that they have this general interest. They're constantly learning and not just in a lip service kind of way, but always reaching out and building their PLN, and not because someone is telling them they have to earn credits or CUs, but because they genuinely have an interest in the world and learning about the world. And I agree that's a super important point.
Anna and I got along like gangbusters in Taiwan because she has a psychology background. So you have a situation where a sociology background and a psychology background start having a conversation. You're like, okay, I'm looking at groups of people. I'm looking at particular people. Oh, cool. This is how this works. We have this exchange of information. You also have the situation in which high achieving people in college don't choose to go teach because of the money. Now, if we think baseball here, rather than, because one of the biggest things is, salary. I don't think that's necessarily the reason why people don't teach. I think that's part of the reason, but I also believe that part of the reason is We don't approach teaching as I want cheap talent for as long as I can keep it before I give them options. So if you look at baseball, I want you in that rookie contract. As long as I can get you in a rookie contract, you may be the greatest hitter in the world. I'm not going to pay you anymore until I have to pay you, right? But I have to make it worth your while. So what if we had a scenario in which you take your talented high school seniors and you say, okay, look, we're going to pay for your undergrad if you go to the public university of our state. Right? You have to stay in our state now. It's not going to private schools or anything. You're going to a public university in our state. And we're going to pay all 4 years of your undergrad. Everything. We'll pay everything. All right. When you come out, you owe us 5 years as a teacher. 5 years. You can major in whatever you want, computer science, engineering, whatever. You got a free degree on us. Owe us 5 years afterward, right? So I'm going to only pay you the whatever the scale is for teachers. I'm not going to pay you anything extra. But now I have a cheap, talented teacher for 5 years. I can bank on for 5 years because if you break the contract, you have to pay all your student loans back, which nobody's going to do that crap, right? So 5 years. I can bank, if I need to do professional learning or whatever for 5 years, you're also going to open it up to a lot of students of color because they're going to look at the situation where I'm really talented, but my mom's broke. Cool. This is going to be really attractive for me. I can go back into my neighborhood and teach in my elementary school, or my middle school, my high school, and help those kids out for 5 years. And after that, I can put that I was a teacher for 5 years on my resume, which everybody's going to like. Oh my goodness, you went back and gave back to your community. It's amazing. Now you can go to medical school. You can go to law school. You can go whatever.
Also, something I've learned in my journey is that skill set that you learn as a teacher is so beneficial in terms of, if you think about every other profession, there's always a time where you have to transfer knowledge, whether that's a one-on-one situation or a small group situation. You're far better prepared to be able to transfer that knowledge efficiently, effectively, and entertainingly than probably most of your peers are. You can manage multiple things. You have had to direct and basically manage a group of small people. There are so many benefits to the skill set of a teacher that when you go into another field and into another profession, you automatically sort of have something more you can give on top of your specialized skill set for that field. Facts.
And then would you rather have a salary coming out of college of $70,000 with all your student loan debt, or a salary of $40,000 with no student loan debt?
Definitely the $40,000 with no student loan debt.
So I'm benefiting. I don't owe anyone any money. I'm going to get a salary. I can do what I need to do. Am I going to be filthy rich? No, I'm not. But in 5 years, I would have learned how to teach, or how to pedagogically do it. And just to what you said, cool, I'm going to go in this other career and I would be able to work a lot more dynamically than other people who don't have that skill set. Also, as a school, I now benefit from having an engineer, a psychologist, a social worker, whatever, all in this space where we can bounce ideas off of one another and say, now we have dynamic conversations coming in, innovative, because we're not all education majors. And that is one of the reasons why school has stayed stagnant for years. Everyone's a freaking education major, fam. And
it tends to be that the people we look to are also people in education. We rarely look outside of our field for inspiration, for to learn more about it, more about different things. Every now and then you get someone who looks at the business world and tries to manage a school like a business, and that fails miserably. That is not to say that there aren't ideas in business that are beneficial. Feedback is something I've taken from my experience in software development. Retrospectives is another thing that I've taken from software development, sprints. So there are concepts in the business world that definitely could be used in education, but trying to run a school like a business is not going to be pretty.
Yeah, but I mean, they're forcing systems to collide. Like Building 20, MIT, right? World War II. Go Google Building 20 on MIT's campus if you don't know what kind of crazy things came out of that we benefit from now. It was forced interactions, forced collisions of ideas from people from different disciplines. And schools should be the same way. It shouldn't be a bunch of ed majors are sitting there, or, One of the things I love is when someone comes as an ARL teacher or something. They used to work on the strip as a pit boss or something like that. And you're like, oh, it's interesting. Like, tell me about your experience. Oh, I had to go this, and then we had to manage this and this and that. Like, all right, cool. That's really interesting that you're going to be looking at this these set of problems in a particular way that is different from how everyone else does things here. And I think that benefits us all if we are open to, just like the retrospectives. Webb's came up with the retrospectives. Or she introduced those to me. I took those and put them in the classroom, and now kids are like having these deep conversations about, okay, cool. I don't want to hurt your feelings, so we're going to have this scenario in which we look at our work. This worked, this didn't work, that part worked, that didn't. Next time we're going to do it this way, or whatever. And you have this these authentic situations, these authentic learning experiences, rather than today's standard is standard 1.4.5, where we will learn how that the verb comes after the noun. Okay, whip-de-doo. That sounds like something I really am going to be excited about. And yeah, I've got 50 minutes to learn about this, and I can't wait till these 50 minutes are over because I don't want to be here.
That too, like going back to the, how do we, teaching has such a bad reputation. How do we bring new people in? I think it would be great if we could use this time we have now and reinvent what school looks like. I don't understand why we keep things in separate subjects. I kind of do. I mean, I get it. It's easier to check that checkbox and say, oh, we did math today. Even though we've shown that this division helps nothing. We haven't seen scores improve, despite the fact that we've, John talked about this a little bit on whatever day that was, Wednesday, Thursday, that things haven't changed. Things haven't improved. But we don't want to take the risk, because nobody ever got fired for using Windows. We don't want to take the risk of trying something different. That's not how the real world works. Like when I have to solve a problem for a customer, like I'm not separating out the math that I have to do from the writing that I have to do. It's one big messy problem that I have to work through using all of my skill set. But it's harder to measure quantitatively progress when all those things are intermingled and messy. Grades are BS, in my opinion. Grades exist because parents understand grades better, because that's what they had when they were kids. It is a snapshot that is insanely subjective based on whoever your teacher is. It's utter garbage and meaningless. And yet we continue to use this system for some reason. Even transitioning to the 1, 2, 3, 4, you're just trading letters for numbers. Like that's not an improvement. Like we know that the way that you provide feedback and show growth is through portfolios. And that was something I wanted to bring up with somebody we were talking to, but I can't remember who. Vermont. I remember being in college and talking about how Vermont was the only state at the time that did portfolios as assessment. It's a smaller state, and I want to say it's more on the relatively wealthy side as states go.
And relatively liberal side as well. Yeah,
exactly. So we know that portfolios are the more effective way of capturing what students have learned, but we don't do it because testing is cheaper and testing gives a quantitative way.
It was Randall probably, because he was the portfolios. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, I think you're right. And testing gives you a quantitative way to put a number on a thing and to say, oh, this is successful, this isn't. Never mind the fact that we have a ridiculous amount of bias in those tests so that they are biased toward Black and brown kids.
Biased against them.
What?
Biased against them.
Yes, exactly. That's something that we talk about but never really address. The whole thing with Freckle a couple weeks ago, there's content that has bias in it. So how can you really say that those tests are an effective measure of learning when there is such extreme bias within them?
But you have 3 million teachers. They're all not teaching the same thing the same way. So you have even variability in the perfection. Yeah. So it depends on who my teacher is. My personal, personally, what do I have going on at home? Do I have access to the internet? Do I have access to experiences? Do I have grandparents? Because we know grandparents are very, very important in this scenario. Do I have a fact that some kids are going to be stuck in daycare during this distance learning? Some people are going to be with a parent or other parent, other mother. far too much variability. Portfolios are relatively easier now than they were 15 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
That's what it was, because he was talking about Flipgrid and how you can use Flipgrid to build portfolios. And I was like, I hadn't thought about recently how we knew 20 years ago when I was in college that portfolios are a far better way of capturing learning.
Capturing growth as well, right?
In capturing growth, exactly. And in terms of a student looking at their own learning. So being able to reflect on, here's what I wrote at the beginning of the year. Here's how I captured my ideas at the beginning of the year. Here's how I captured them at the end. How have I changed over time? Being reflective, getting that feedback from other people by sharing it.
Yeah.
We know that that's a better approach. We have the tools now to be able to do that. Why don't we do it? You know, if we were just a little more agile and innovative in education, I think that would make it more appealing. How many kids don't go into education because of the crappy experience they had when they were kids?
Exactly. So that's one of the things we hit upon multiple times on the PBS series. You don't have black and brown people in it because school is traumatic. School is problematic. I've experienced racism. I've experienced low expectations. I experienced opportunities are times when I was forced to do things that I wasn't particularly comfortable with or I didn't agree with. School is forced upon students. It is not a situation where it's a collaborative experience. And so I think when you start to take that out, you would also have people who are very attractive to, this is a place where I can be creative. This is a place where I have a space where I can work with other people. And if that's not the way we're going to go, again, you're going to have difficulties recruiting people because nobody wants to be down with you're going to again, I cannot go to the restroom when I want to. I can't. That's deep.
And we just accept it. Like, that's just normal. You're confined to a room by yourself for most of the day. And we think that's normal, which is hilarious because there are so many people clamoring about kids need to be back in school so they can have socialization. But we isolate the adults that take care of those kids for 8 hours a day.
And then that's a less than truthful argument anyway. Socialization. Okay, cool. Do you allow your kids to talk in your class?
I mean, I did, but I know lots of teachers who don't.
Generally, right?
No.
Do you go and you force people to walk in straight lines? Generally,
for sure.
That's what people do, right?
That's just the way that school works.
You can't talk in line. It is
lunchtime.
It models prison culture. It doesn't model school. It doesn't model like socializing with people and getting to know people in relationships. It models you will do the chain gang shuffle through on the line, right? Do the chain gang shuffle. You can't say anything in the hallways because, oh my God, he's talking. Even though as a teacher, I will talk to other teachers as they walk past the hallway, right? So for me, there's a different, because I'm one of the wardens, right? Or one of the correctional officers, I get to go and talk to another correctional officer. But if you open your mouth, shush, we don't talk in the halls. Okay. In real life, when I'm at the mall, do I not talk as I'm walking from store to store? Like normal people do that. This is a normal reaction. So why do we create this artificial place in which one cannot talk as one is moving from place to place?
And then we wonder why people become adults and can't handle themselves because they've spent 13 years being told exactly what to do and think and all that kind of thing. No problem solving.
Like, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this as somebody else watches this. Like, sometimes I'll take, especially the kindergartners, and I will do like purposeful like worms and have the kids, let's go and say our ABCs. Hey, and they just yelling through the car. And I'm just like, and like, every now and then somebody will pop their head off like, oh my God. And I'll just kind of like, yeah, they just want to say ABCs. I mean, I don't know. Like, even the way
schools are designed to reflect prison culture. You have your one little room, you have your walls up, there's no windows.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in a portable, that was the worst experience in my life. Those 2 years.
I didn't like being in a portable either.
Sweet Jesus. That's horrible. Horrible.
There was another comment, and I hope that answered your question on, well, at least from our perspective, Tiffany. I wonder why it is that my granddaughter attends a school that is majority Hispanic school that these kids can't teach each other English and Spanish. It's almost as if they have to have a teacher teach them Spanish. Why? If I were a principal, I would be gangsta enough to have a program in my school that each kid would help the other with their respective languages.
how many studies do we have to do that when you learn another language, you learn your first language better? Like, how many studies are there that exist that way? Shout out to Fort Lincoln Elementary School. It was torn down. It breaks my heart that my elementary school was torn down. We had Senor Harry when I was in elementary school who taught us Spanish, all right, in elementary. When I moved out to Vegas and there was no Spanish program or any second language program in elementary school, I was like, oh my God, like, words? Like,
I got a good story for you. So my very first year of teaching here in Clark County, I was all excited because I was like, sweet, my Spanish will not go to waste. So when I first started, I was teaching my because I knew I had a number of students who some spoke only Spanish, some spoke primarily Spanish and a little English. So I was doing my class bilingual. I would give my instructions in English and then give them in Spanish. And I had this nice little, back and forth. A couple weeks into school, a specialist pulls me aside and says, you can't do that because those kids, they'll never learn English if you're constantly giving them instructions in Spanish. I'm a first year teacher. I don't know anything. I just know I don't want to get fired because I'm out here all by myself. My family doesn't live out here. But it hurt so much because one, I knew that wasn't the case. I knew from my education that like students learn best in their native language. I knew that, students can excel in content areas if you're presenting it to them in their native language as they learn English. I knew that it was beneficial to the students who learned English to be exposed to Spanish. And yet I stopped doing it because I didn't want to get written up.
That's absolutely insane. Absolutely.
So also you're talking about like, so here I am, and now, I mean, I don't want to say now because this was true then too. Bilingual teachers are a commodity and are praised and desired, but only in certain situations. Right. So I think it also goes to kind of like your mom was saying, like, so a teacher has to teach you a thing, but only in certain circumstances. Facts. So like, if it's just a matter of, hey, you happen to have this teacher who can teach in both languages, that isn't acceptable. But if you have a specifically bilingual school, then it's acceptable. So yeah, it's interesting the invisible rules that are set up, and the ways that we discourage teachers from doing things like that.
I mean, so I'm going to use my own educational experience. Again, I started learning Spanish when I was in kindergarten. Again, this is an all-black school. This is what there was nobody at the school that spoke Spanish. So Senor Harry came through, Dominican cat, taught us. He taught us Spanish from K to 6. Then I went to middle school and they had Latin, so I learned Latin in 7th and 8th grade. Then I went to high school and got Spanish again. Then I went to all those different ways of being influence you, and you start to understand again your native language better. You start to understand gerunds and infinitives and things because you're like, all right, cool. That a gerund. Oh, okay, I had to learn that in Miss Arlene's class in Latin. I had to learn that in Miss Senor Harry's class or whatever. You become a master of English because you were forced to think outside the box. Then you go to Spain and you're like, all right, cool. This is Castilian. This is a different type of Spanish. Then I went to China, to Taiwan, and you learn some Chinese words and stuff. You're like, all right, I got all these little weird concepts. This is the only country that is like this, where we're so xenophobic that we don't want to be exposed to other languages. Absolutely crazy. We've been talking for an hour, and I got an appointment at 1 o'clock. We've been talking for an hour. Party on, party people. We will be doing more and more insane things like this in the future.
Oh my gosh, this is super fun. You're going to get sick of us because I love this. This is great. We got our little comments on the side and everything.
Indeed.
Thanks for coming to Virgil Con, and we'll see you on the flip side.
See you when we see you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.